So to decorate your card, the one we marked number 1, which is here, it's got the first mountain fold and then a valley fold. I've got a pattern here that so I know which ones I need to stamp on and which ones I'm going to cover. So where the mountain fold is there, and up to that cut line, I'm going to make a little pencil mark there so that I know I've got to go all the way down from that cut line down to the bottom. That piece I'm going to stamp on, that section. The section next to it I'm going to cover with paper, so I'll write cover on there. And then if you turn that one over, so you've got the short end that side, the first section up to the cut don't do anything with. The second section from the cut to the score I'm going to stamp on that one, so I'll write an S on that one, just draw a pencil mark down from the cut to the bottom. Then I'm going to leave 2, so that middle section I'm going to leave. Then this one from the score line to the cut is a cover, so we write cover in there, and then the next one is a stamp. So if you put your pencil mark down from the cut line to the bottom, this section is to be covered and that side is to be stamped. On the second piece, with the slits at the bottom, the long edge at your left hand side, and with the valley fold first and the mountain fold afterwards, the first section will be a stamped section, the second strip will be covered, then 2 strips, 3 up to that scored line, and then this section stamped all the way from the slit up to the top, so that section there, and nothing on that one. Turn it over. This is my pattern, so turn that as well. So on this one, the first 2 sections are not anything on, and then this next one is covered, and then this next one is a stamped one, so we take the line up to the top, and then 2 blank. To decorate, you need some 1.5 inch strips. We've only got 4 sections to cover. The 1.5 inch strips will fit nicely between the score lines. Just need to pop some glue on. And then where you've written cover, then you can just pop your papers on. If you do it all the same, it won't matter, but you'll get to know which ones match the other ones when you're putting them together. So at the start, maybe do it with the same paper so that you haven't got to worry about them matching. I've got one more on the other side, so we do the same thing on there. You can either put your glue on your card or on your paper, whichever you like. Make sure you put the glue right up to the edges so that the edges don't lift. Just pop the 1.5 inch strip on there, turn it over and just trim off, and then turn the other one over and do the same on there where you put cover. So I've inked all the sections except the paper one that we covered. Now, although I showed you how to cover them, I wanted to do it before I inked it so you could see really well which was the covered pieces and which was the stamped pieces. You need to cover yours after you've inked, so don't do that first, because otherwise your ink will get all over your papers. So you need to cover the paper pieces last. Do your inking first. So what I do, if I'm going to take it straight off the pad and I'm using the old baby wipe, I just pop some ink on that mat, and then you can get a nice misty sort of finish, smoother than if you go straight from the pad. If you go straight from the pad, you'll get that. You see, that's a much more different look. I do want a little bit of this because I do want some sort of deeper pieces, but that's the difference between going from the pad, straight from the pad, and getting these very dark pieces, or taking it onto your pad, rubbing it round and then applying it. And I've got the Memento Olive Grove, that's what I'm using. Distress Ink Wild Honey, I've given it one coat of with the distress tool, and I'm just applying some of that Memento ink to get some of that green in, because I want this really nice autumny colours. And then when I've applied the green, I'm also going to use the spice marmalade, and I'm going to put that on with the baby wipe. So I'm going to do exactly the same. If I don't want it a very hard look, I'll put some on the mat, and if I want it more, see the difference there. You see the difference, much deeper colour. So I'm just applying some of that. Lovely autumny sort of colours. And to talk about other inks, when we start to stamp, you can get layers from using different types of inks. So if you use the distress inks and the Memento inks, you'll get a different look. The distress inks are more translucent because they're water based. This is a fade resistant dye ink, so it's much darker and deeper, and it's just more opaque, so that brings the image forward. So this is how I store my Lavinia stamps. I just pop a little tag on the outside edge, and then I know what's inside, and I just keep them in a drawer. And I'm using the foliage. There's these three. This is a nice leafy one with a swirl on it, and there's this one and the ivy, so I'm using those, and I'm also using this one as well. We ink the stamp up with spice marmalade, so we're using the more translucent ink first. Then we're going to just stamp lightly on our paper to take some of that ink away, and then I'm going to stamp onto my card. That's going to give us just a really misty, very slight image, which is what I want in the background. So I'm going to do that on that one, and another one I think on the back here, because I need to put the fairy on the back panel. So again, stamp it on some scrap and then on the card, and as you can see, again, that's come out like that. Then we can use another foliage, and again I'm going to pop that on with some spice marmalade, again taking some off, but only a tiny bit this time, and I'm going to stamp that in the middle. You see, very light. I'm using the same old dry baby wipe that I'm using for my inks. And then I'm going to pop the leaf on, and I'm going to do that in, I want the foliage on the front because that's going to go that way. My other one is going to come this way, and I've got some foliage on there. And I'm going to use the Olive Grove. Actually, let's put a little bit of this Olive Grove with this one. I'm going to do exactly the same with that, and although this is more opaque, I'm going to do that dabbing it off first so that I don't get a very dark image. So that's given me a background again. And then I'm going to get the other leaf one, and now I'm going to do exactly the same with this one. Just ink some of it up very lightly this time, tap it on the paper extremely lightly, because I want to see some of those leaves. I want that lovely leaf shape that this stamp has. I'm not being very particular about the stamping, the actual getting the ink on properly, because I do just literally want some little tiny bits of image on there, so we're not worried too much about anything being a perfect image. And again, I'll do some more lightly on the back panel. You can use it a couple of times. There. Now I'm going to use the Memento black ink, which is going to give me a really opaque image, and that's going to bring that forward. So this one, and it's black, which is going to make it extremely opaque, and it's going to bring it towards the foreground like this. So that looks like the mist and beautiful, beautiful autumn colours, and then you've got your foliage in there, and dark, and lovely and dark. So we'll do another image just coming up the top, I think, here. Just a little few leaves. Do that again. I just want a little bit on there because, as I say, I'm going to put a fairy on there eventually. So I don't want too much on that one. I'll put a little bit at the bottom as well. Like that. And then in the middle I'm going to use some of that trailing ivy. I do love this one, it's really lovely. So I've stamped the fairy on that side because that's where we'll see the image, and I'm just putting this little star composition there as she's sort of cupping it in her hands. So I'm going to put a little bit more foliage with the Memento on there, and I'm going to use this as a mask. Just use some paper as a mask so it doesn't go on your other panel, and just stamp it there. Get a nice crisp image on there. So that's that. I will want to put something, although that is going to go as sort of, that will be the back, so you won't really see that an awful lot until you turn it sideways. I need to find something to go in there. So to fill this section in a bit, I've decided to put a couple of butterflies, which I've got, and that's of course part of the Lavinia, those two there. And another stamp I've got is, forget what she's called, I forget what all of them are called, I'll have to write them down and then tell you which ones I used. So now you've inked everything, you can put that little strip of covering paper on the ones that we were going to cover. I've used some thin card, but I think paper would be better, much better, because it would fold better. And I've inked the edges. They were 1.5 inches wide, and then just make them a little bit bigger and then just cut the excess off like I'm doing. You will need to trim, probably need to trim a little tiny bit off the long side on that 1.5, because you've got your scored side there, which will make it a little bit tight. So that's it, how it looks. I've sprayed it now with the Tattered Angels and given it that sparkly look. So that's that. to put it together, we need to just slot one in against the other. So just slot it, sort of, don't worry about trying to get it in the holes at first, just slot it in. Oh, sorry, I'm not even in camera, am I? Just slot it in roughly first, that's the best way to do it, and then concentrate on getting it into the holes. So one goes on the other and slides down. But if you get it roughly around, and then you can just slot it in. And then concertina it up. You see my card is a little bit thick, so it's not laying quite as flat as I really wanted it to. And now you can leave that. You could have inked all the front and just left it like that. I like to put a piece on the front and I like to put a piece on the back, but I have inked that back. So you could leave it like that if you wanted to, but I'm going to back it and put that piece on the front. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to ink it the way I did the side panels. I'm going to put her on the front there. And then I'll come back to you. I've done the back card as I'm going to put the backing on mine. Done the front, done that sitting fairy and just glossy accented her wings and did the foliage like we did before. I did some just around the edges because you won't see that because it'll be stuck on the card. And the back I've done like this. I've also used this fairy on the moon and I've cut round her. That's the actual stamp. I've cut round her and I'm going to 3D her on there on the side. I've also stamped this, which is have a fairy happy birthday, which is the greeting for the front. On the back I've just put the papers that I've covered some of this with, so it's all leaves, which is lovely. I love that. So that's how we've done that. So I'm just going to glue that on there. As I say, if you wanted to, you could leave that. You didn't need to put the backing on, but I like to put the backing on there. So I did sort of just do it so that you could see you could leave it if you wanted to. And not have to do it. There's also a few other things you could do. You could cut that straight. This top bit, you could cut that off straight or cut it at an angle with that if you don't like the look of that. And I'm going to just pop mine on there like that. So as you can see, I've stamped the foliage at the top so it will show through on that little piece there. And then I'm going to stick this one on the front. As you can see, I've got a bit carried away with the inking on that side. I didn't need to do that either. Nothing like making too much work for yourself, is there? So pop that on there and just hold that down while that's, you can push it down like this. As I say, why my card is not sitting like that is because I used a thick card and I didn't, you know, it's just too thick and it's getting in the way of the folds. But yours would go flat if you use paper. So I've finished the card now. Stamped the fairy, done the greeting and just lifted it up a little bit, put a bow on there, 3D that fairy. So you can see the fairies at the side. If you open it out a little bit. The fairies are all stamped at the side and on that side. So I hope you have a go, hope you like that, and I'll see you soon. Bye!